Hi. So today I welcome Helen, who's a content strategist and writer. Started her business in the late 2022. So hi, Helen. Can you just give us a brief introduction about who you are and what your business is all about?
Yes, so as you say, my name's Helen. I run Helen Barnett Media, which is a content strategy and writing business. I'm technically self-employed, so I work for myself, and that's why it's named after me. And essentially, I help businesses work out what they need to say where to connect with their ideal clients and make more sales. I was a journalist and editor on the Nationals before doing this, so I take that sort of nose for a story to sort of pull out the unique angle of a business or person.
Thank you for that introduction. But tell us, Helen, a little bit more about your journey into self-employment and starting your own business. What were your main drivers? What were some of the initial considerations and the actions that you took to prepare yourself to take the leap?
Yeah, so as I said, I was a journalist on the Nationals, which is obviously a high pressure environment. I think I do thrive in under stress and I need a deadline, but after a while that can take a toll. And especially during COVID when there's a lot of working from home, and I mean, I was working from home for a very long time, and people can't necessarily see how busy you are. So keep putting more on you, and the people pleaser that I am never really stuck to boundaries, and it just got a bit too much. And also the news agenda had kind of been so tumultuous in the last 8 years that it started to get bit more normal. And I guess I was just sort of needing a bit more of a challenge after all of that. So I've done the sort of the news cycle quite a few times, and yeah, I just needed something else to sort of give me a challenge and learn again. I think that the learning was something that I was missing, just learning new skills, growing, that kind of thing. Redundancy came up at work, and I thought that would be a good opportunity to try something different with a bit of the financial security blanket. And I had been approached by some people previously saying, please, can you write me some copy? Can you help me with this? Can you help? What would you do here? And so it's kind of been in the back of my mind that I could do copywriting if I ended up being made redundant and having to leave my job, because that is always a risk in journalism. So I always had in the back of my mind, what would I do if that horrendous redundancy was forced on me? And so when it came up and it could be a choice to make, it felt like the right time to take a jump. I don't say it was ever a right time to say I feel really ready, but it felt like the best time to take it. I'd spoken to these couple of people who'd come to me and said, can you do something? And I said, well, would you want me to can we set something up so that I've got something to walk into when I walk out of the job? And yeah, they said yes. So it felt like that was the beginning, and just sort of crack on.
Okay, so a little bit of a mixture of wanting to a new challenge and wanting to keep learning and developing yourself. And as you said, you thrive on a challenge, thrive on a deadline. So yeah, taking a leap into entrepreneurship probably fitted well with that. And like what you said about checking in with few people about being able to do some work for them as well, and having that financial security after redundancy. What was your main goal with starting your own business? How did you envisage that?
I think I just wanted autonomy and balance, because I felt like it had been work sometimes becomes, when you are a people pleaser, it can become you, and you're doing it for somebody else. Basically, you are just doing all the things all the time and needing that sort of validation. Whereas I thought, okay, I want to actually do this for me and, not run myself ragged if I don't have to. Try and get that sort of, what's the word? Inner peace, I guess. Just not feeling so stressed and beholden to somebody all the time.
I see. Why was the autonomy and balance important to you?
I think, like, looking back and looking at what I've had to learn about myself, is that I probably didn't really know who I was, because I feel like I'd always tried to like fit in with what I assumed my employer would want and the person they would want. And with it, I would still have my like morals and values and the way that I would want to behave in front of people and treat people. But essentially we were striving for something that was somebody else's goal. So actually thinking, what's my goal? What do I want to do? What do I want out of it? Was, yeah, that was kind of the autonomy that I wanted, thinking, what do I think is the right direction, and then following it.
Yeah, so it sounds like employment is pursuing someone else's agenda, pursuing someone else's goals, and it's like, what am I actually getting from that?
And I think like growing a company organically for like what makes business sense for the future, for long term. I think sometimes businesses can be looking at short term, not all businesses, but some businesses, particularly ones that are shareholder run, might be looking for that sort of short term results, and that don't necessarily align with the long term, what makes business sense long term. So that was a bit jarring, and I would prefer to look at something like grow something organically.
I'm curious about whether there are any specific events or circumstances that triggered that decision. That you mentioned, obviously, the redundancy was of a catalyst, and you said, there's never the right time. It felt like the most right time for you. But, I always feel like, for us women, there is, whether there is childcare or whether there's elderly parents, or whether there's kind of relationships outside of work, or perhaps you also mentioned COVID played a little bit of a part there. So what would you say were kind of the key factors that influenced your decision?
Yeah, I think I went through some sort of health issues, which I won't go into too much, but it did put a bit of a strain on me physically and emotionally. And I think I just needed to do something more for me. And it kind of put things into perspective, I think. And yeah, it makes you realize what's important, but it also makes you think about what you want to be doing for the rest of your time. So can I physically do this? At the time, I couldn't physically do it. And that's nothing that an employer could sort out. That was just my circumstance. And like my employer was very good about it, but I just needed to, I think it just made me think, is this worth it? I thought I need to do something that like brings me a bit more joy and fulfillment at that point in my life.
Yeah, and like, as you said, what you kind of makes you consider what's really important, and brings that different perspective. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And so tell me a little bit about, did you have any fears or concerns going into the business?
I mean, I guess the big one is, am I going to get enough clients? And how do I get them? But I also was probably quite naive as well, thinking I'll put something out on LinkedIn and I'll get lots of people who want to work with me. And you kind of just don't anticipate all the promotion that's needed. Yeah, that's probably quite naive.
It's like if we knew what it was going to take, we would never start that business.
And yeah, I think it was a good thing to be ignorant about it all, because I wouldn't have done it. You're right. I wouldn't have done it if I'd have sat down and thought, what are all the risks? Then you could quite easily just not do it. And I would rather jump in and work it out as I go.
Yeah. And how has that been?
Challenging, but that's what I wanted. And because I said, I want to learn, I had that open mind of like, well, there's going to be loads of stuff that I don't know, and I just have to learn it. And I'm prepared to learn it because that's what I want out of all this. So it has been a very much jump in at the deep end, try and work out how to swim. And I think the self-promotion and the networking is definitely something that takes a lot more time than I anticipated. But I also do enjoy it because it's coming from me and how I want to be perceived. So, I get to make that decision. So that's interesting. But also on the flip side of that is you do have to work out who you are. And there's something that I didn't anticipate, is the real like self-reflection, the deep diving into who you are, and like tackling those insecurities and negative points. And you have to tackle them head on, otherwise you're not going to succeed. So I think the first one for me was actually like, who am I? Which is bizarre because, you think that you know who you are, but actually, because you've been working for representing businesses your whole life, it's actually, well, who do I want to be when I go networking? And like, well, who is that person? And what is, instead of thinking what's the right thing to say, it's like, what do I actually want to say? So I think that was the big shift for me. And it's quite freeing, actually. And if you think, and it's, you end up having imposter syndrome at some point, well, all the time. But what I like tell myself is that who am I hurting if I get it wrong? It's me, and I'm okay. I'm not going to get in trouble with anybody if I make a mistake. It's just I'll just kick myself. So that gives you like the push to say your thoughts. People might not agree with them, but it's okay because it's you being authentic. So I think that's been a big learning curve. And yeah, the importance of networks and building your profile as well has definitely been something that I underestimated.
So, where was your focus? What were you kind of planning for before leaving your job?
I probably thought I was going to be writing, but actually, when I did start thinking about it, I thought I have a lot more skills than just writing. So I kind of like reframed it into strategy because, I was an editor on the National, so I had to be strategic and I had to pick the right stories for our audience and for our website. So I've kind of reframed it as a more like advisory role as well as I can write the things for you. But yeah, when I was thinking about it, is I actually do enjoy more the strategy side of it and actually thinking who is this business? How do they need to position themselves? So that's also made me have to reposition myself too.
Okay, so we're touching on that as we go. But what was the reality check? How was it different to what you anticipated?
Yeah, so first of all, the self-promotion is definitely a lot more than is needed than you think. And also my positioning. I think at first I was trying to be like everyone else. So all the other copywriters that were already out there, marketers, I was trying to fit in. And then I realized that my USP is that I was a journalist. So I used to think I need to just sound like everybody else and be like, look professional by, talking about marketing all the time. But actually, that makes me sound like everybody else. So I was trying to sound like everybody else, but I needed to be someone different. And I do have something different. I'm not making it up. I'm just kind of pointing it out that, yeah, I am a marketer with a journalism background. So I'm really good at telling a story. And so I think that was a big light bulb moment for me. And you'll see it all over my marketing. If you see me on LinkedIn and Instagram, I'll tell you about how to write a good article, the writing tips all the time. Yeah, how best to position yourself and what makes your unique angle, all that kind of thing. It's all comes back to journalism for me because it is a passion. I mean, I always wanted to be a journalist as a kid. So, I'm not going to forget that side of me. But yes, I think that was one thing that was a big realization. The second thing was working out who I actually am and want to be. And I think it's still a work in progress, but I feel more comfortable being me now, which is crazy. I'm sure my family and friends will think like, yeah, well, my boyfriend will definitely see a difference in me, I think, from when I first started out, just doubting everything that I was doing. And yeah, it's just getting over that imposter syndrome of am I good enough because my background is different. And actually, you just have to remember that gives you an edge. So I think imposter syndrome comes up to me all the time and says hi. I can't get rid of it, but yeah, I just have to give myself a bit of a talking to and sort of realize that it's all part of growth.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we all go into business with this vision of this beautiful thing that we are creating and how the life can be. And it absolutely can. But I think on the way getting there, we will face all the things that are getting in the way of us creating that. And that is the self-doubt, and that is the negative self-talk, and that is the imposter syndrome, and that is our people-pleasing tendencies or lack of boundaries, everything that gets in the way of us having this beautiful vision as a reality will come up, and we'll have to face it and we will have to overcome it. And yeah, it is a longer journey than we probably anticipate when we first start.
Yeah, and I don't know if it'll ever end. I don't know, but I'm of the mindset of you never stop learning anyway. So Like, I'm prepared for that. I'm prepared to for always be challenged and have to think differently and shift things and yeah, pivots. I guess that's the excitement and the terror of running a business because it's just you never know what's going to happen and you have if you want to keep going, you have to keep going somehow. So it's kind of working out how to navigate challenges and make decisions, which has never been my strong point.
And so, okay, going back to this kind of reality check and what you had to learn, are there any other lessons that come to mind that you want to share or that you wish you had known or you could tell your younger self?
Yeah, so I actually met a young lady who is setting up a business, or she's thinking about setting up a business at the moment. And she was like, "Oh, what would you do if you could start all over again?" And one of the main things was grow my audience before I left, because once you've cultivated that audience, that you've warmed them up, basically, they're ready for you, or at least some of them will be ready for you if you come out. So I never posted on my LinkedIn, and even though I tell everyone to do that now, but at the time I wasn't a business, so I didn't really, I very rarely posted anything, and now I use it all the time. So yeah, start growing my audience sooner, I think.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And how do you now navigate the things that you have realized were possibly a challenge? So, you're people pleasing from the corporate world, having stronger boundaries. How do you now manage that in entrepreneurship?
I mean, it's always a work in progress, but I think I recognize the people pleasing bit. So before I was probably just oblivious to that's just the way I am. And now I actually know that it's a thing and have to actually take a step back and think, no, what's right for me? Is this right for me? If it's not, then don't do it. Because there's always people who want you to come along on their journey with them. They want to sell to you, or they want you to join them at something, or there's everybody is all trying to make their business work, and so you have to, or like maybe they want to do a partnership with you or something like that, and it's thinking, well, yes, that's great that you are wanted, but be more selective on the things that you do say yes to. So, is it serving me as well as them? Or is there, yeah, it needs to work both ways. So there's only so many hours in the day and there's things that I need to get done too. So I can't just be helping everybody else and saving them. So maybe that's could sound selfish, but also it's setting your boundaries so that you actually get when you actually look at the bottom line and think, how much money have I made today? Or is this going towards me making money in the future? Can I pay my bills? Then there's quite quick you put a boundary in.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And whilst I always think, it's fine to try some things, but you can quickly figure out what's really contributing to your business growth and what doesn't.
It's all a learning curve, and invest a lot of time in things that don't make money because it's necessary. But yeah, I think as you keep building your confidence and actually working out what's worth it and what's what not, that's when you start to put boundaries in.
And what would you say have been your biggest successes in the last just over 2 years, 2.5 years?
Well, I never touched my redundancy money. That was a big target of mine. So I've never had to use that. So I'm really proud of that. Secondly, is the network that I've built up and I'm still building it. But I'm not from Essex originally. I stopped working in Essex 8 years, well, more than 8 years ago now, 10 years ago, actually. And so I didn't have really any network here anymore after working in London for so long. So I had to come and start from scratch. It took me a few months to start networking, but it was, I think it was probably like 4 or 5 months in, maybe 5 months in. I just thought, right, okay, I need to get out there. And it was the best thing I ever did because then you start seeing the same people around and you start talking to people they know, and then you meet other people. And sooner or later, I feel like I do know quite a lot of the business community in Essex, particularly South Essex. So yeah, I think that has been my biggest achievement, is just growing my network.
Fantastic. And what difference has that made to you, being able to do that?
Well, I feel confident walking into a room. Might not know anyone, but I know that I can talk to people. So I've never been someone who's been terrified of networking. I think I've always been grown up with random people in our kitchen from people just popping in to see my parents. So there would always be, I'd always come home from school and there'd just be some stranger in the kitchen that I didn't know and have to talk to. So I've never been, really out of my comfort zone. You always feel a little bit nervous, but yeah. But I do think I now feel like I can walk into a room and just start that conversation and it'll be fine. It's just one of those things you've got to do and you never know where it's going to lead. So yeah, I think and then also just being able to summarize what I do, because I think content strategy, a lot of people kind of scratch their heads at what that means, but I've been able to refine my pitch, just explain what it is I do in a sentence or 2 sentences. And yeah, then I feel like people get it. Yeah.
So the power of building your own confidence, really going into those different rooms, talking to different people, building relationships, and also refining your pitch and the ability to get what you do across so that people can actually understand the idea and buy into it. Okay, so just kind of bringing this to an end, what sort of skills would you say are crucial for business success?
Resilience, because you're going to get rejections and you just need to brush them off and crack on. I don't think you need confidence, because I think that's a skill you can train up. I just think you need the determination. So confidence comes by doing it, but determination is the thing that's going to get you there. And working out the problems that you solve for your customer. I think that's the other thing that you also need. You need to have that as your main part of your business strategy, marketing strategy, content strategy. All comes down to what people need rather than it coming down to you. It's what your customers need.
Are there any specific resources or advice that you feel that as an aspiring woman entrepreneur, or as you are building your business, have made a real difference to you and you also would recommend to others?
I think the free networking in your local area is really handy, just to meet people who are going through the same thing as you, people who have been where you are. I think that's invaluable. The free ones are usually put on some sort of connection to the council, but there might be other ones in your area that are run by a group that's free. But I'd say, yeah, free resources in terms of networking for sure before you start going to paid ones, because then you work out what you need from the networking and what helps you. Also, there's a lot of business support that councils put on, and it's always you can feel a bit confusing at first, but just get on the mailing lists, because I say confusing at first because different boroughs have different budgets and they have different projects, and sometimes it's a county-wide, sometimes it's a borough initiative, but so there's all sorts of different resources at different times of the year depending on where you live. But just look at the local authorities that you're in and see what's available, because there is stuff out there.
What's your view on the current entrepreneurial landscape and how women are shaping and navigating the entrepreneurial reality, having been to networking, from your own experience and also from the feedback that you are getting from women out there?
I think after COVID, a lot of people left their corporate jobs to pursue a passion project. A lot of women did this. And so there were a lot of solopreneurs or, self-employed people from probably about 21, 22, 2020, 2022. There was I personally felt like there was a big explosion. And then I wonder how many have continued, how many have been able to scale, or whether they were just more based on a passion project rather than a business that becomes something bigger than just them. And there's nothing wrong with doing either, but I do wonder if that risk has potentially diminished a little bit, like the appetite for risk during the economic climate, especially because people are being forced back to the office. Feels like people are being forced into staying in the corporate land. We're going backwards a little bit in that sense. So, and because of the climate, do people feel like less or more risk averse? And I think women particularly are risk averse. Like I said, I took redundancy to fund my business just in case, but I didn't need to, because I've just proven that I've not had to use that money. But I don't think I would have done it without any financial backing. So yeah, I think we need a bit more encouragement for women to take risks personally and be bigger than what they stop, think bigger rather than thinking small.
I love that. And I think you're totally right. A lot of people saw entrepreneurship as an opportunity to create a bit more of that flexibility and autonomy. That do the risks and the challenges outweigh that? It'll be really interesting to see, because we've had a huge rise in like 150,000 businesses and 70,000 businesses being founded every year since COVID. Do you think there is the right support out there for women to access?
I think there are a lot of resources tailored to women, saying, for example, local council have put on women in business support groups. Whether or not, the quality of those, I don't know. I don't know if they're pushing people enough, but it's kind of like it's out there if you find it. So I think I would encourage people to search for a bigger network of information and just people in general, people who surrounding yourselves with people who are like going bigger, just to sort of give you that inspiration. Maybe we need a bit more like mentorship to show what's possible. And because I do think, as particularly if you are maybe a parent or someone with other caring responsibilities, it's harder for you to look outside of your immediate. So actually being exposed to people who have gone bigger would be inspirational, I think.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for all your insights and for sharing really authentically and really honestly your own journey. I think it's really inspirational, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with us today.